Hello, everybody. We are entering eclipse season. Who's with me here? We're just going to start with a partial solar eclipse, but the energies are really intense. And some of you are all over this, already feeling this intense energy. And so I'm naming this CIRF week, which runs from April 28th to May 4th, the gut check. How determined are you? By the way, the partial solar eclipse is in Taurus, so determination is going to be part of this matrix this week. All right, here's our summary slide. And I have a little extra circle in here. This is our triangulation. For those of you who are new, we triangulate for the biggest energy. We don't go, we are going to drill down day by day with the astrology and whatnot, but we want to leave you with a concept. Just make it easy. One main energy to feel, to look for, and then one main solution. We're going to triangulate for the actions, for the behaviors that you should probably take in order to maximize the feelings or the energies that we're facing. All right. So this is the energies. And we're triangulating with the collective unconscious, which says very big into learning and knowing. And in my mind, that equates to Mercury and Gemini, which happens over the course of this week. But also the eclipse conjunct Uranus because of these inner monsters. The eclipse is sort of a monster in and of itself. It's a big shift point. And that can create adaptation, but it's a hyper adaptation because we got Uranus in the mix. I'm going to show you all this, but I'm just correlating where the Dreambot is in terms of the astrology. For some reason, the collective unconscious is looking at the inner monsters, and the inner monsters is sort of a question mark. I'll show you all this, but learning and knowing and possibly learning the inner monsters. That almost sounds like shadow work. Don't worry. It's not a shadow work week, okay? But there might be the presence of these inner monsters that come through here for some reason. And I've already seen these in dreamland. All right. Tropical astrology. This is the big circle, but the little purple circle is obviously this solar eclipse. It's a new moon at 10 degrees Taurus, 28 minutes. And it is conjunct Uranus, like I said before, but that's the center focus of the astrology. It's right in the middle of the week. It's the biggest energy out there. And in addition to that, we have a lot of sextiles. We do have some pressure points with some squares. We have Venus going into Aries in a detriment. So we'll talk about all that. And we have a consolidation of the planets. They fall into either the earth or the water. I find that interesting. When you got earth connecting with water, seems to be growth. And that's what I think of. When you've got water hitting the plants, they tend to grow. Of course, you also need sunshine and some fire. You also need some oxygen and some air, or I guess most of them rely on carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct of us consuming air. Anyway, we got all the elements here, but we're only focused on two of them, earth and water. And then the I-Ching says, really interesting, excessive pressure. That's really interesting. So now when you connect excessive pressure with earth and water, for example, I mean, excessive pressure just automatically makes me think of squares in astrology, because that's where our conflicts come in and pressure and focus areas that you can't really avoid necessarily are T-squares and all that. And obviously there are some of those squares, but I'm thinking this earth and water is a different kind of excessive pressure. First of all, when you get a large body of water on the earth, I mean, just the weight alone is a lot of pressure. Imagine going down 100 feet or 1,000 feet into the water, the amount of pressure on your ears, it can blow them out. And then vice versa, coming back out of that. So there can be pressure when we look at earth and water. And I think it's a long duration. Think about how water over time, moving water, can sort of deteriorate and turn into like a creek at some point, into this big ravine, like the Grand Canyon can create something like that over a long period of time. So there is a pressure with water and earth. Anyway, when you put all this stuff together, the Dreambot represents a little bit more, but the I-Ching definitely represents that eclipse and the conjunct with Uranus. So it's right in the middle there. The Dreambot includes the Gemini, Mercury and Gemini, because it's learning and knowing. But all in all, it's a very high, I didn't update that congruency score. I should have. It's probably more, higher than 90%, I'd say. And it's like a gut check. And a gut check is not a sucker punch to the gut, but it's a question of your determination. Let's get into all this, nail these down so you can get an idea for what to expect. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do that. On YouTube, we are growing. On Rumble, we're over there as well as our backup channel, but that's growing nicely. My favorite now, I loved everybody's comment, but I fell in love with the comment from Gracious Love, who said, "Thank you so much for your service to our ascension process. Things so freaking intense right now." Gracious Love nailed the energies for this week. And I'm also glad that they say hearing your take on it helps a lot. That's why I do the program. I'm hoping so much that this helps. I do it for free. I have made a total of 3 cents over on Rumble, and I'm not doing this for money. I'm just doing this to help. So I'm glad that people are getting some benefit out of it. Let's look at the, wrong button. Let's look at the Dreambot first. The top word with 43 surge score is inner. And the second word is monsters with 41 surge score. So the top two, inner, monsters. There you go. But there are, with these red arrows, sort of like the context, like dragon and eating, there's and break, sort of things that destructive nature of monsters. I don't know if inner belongs in there, but it is a linguistics. Let me read that linguistics right now. Inner, monsters, waves, learned, technique, break. To me, this is a resounding thing that, first of all, you have a gut check. And the nature of this is inner monsters might be coming out and bubbling into your awareness so that you can work on them. This is not really shadow work. It's not like you're going in and finding these. These just come out in different scenarios, emotions, dreams, mystical phenomenon, unanswerable experiences. And some people say that these are the things that would hold you back from the ascension process, right? From being able to move on to the next level. So let them come up. Let them create your gut check. And in doing so, in a very Saturnian way, you get to learn how to break the technique, or you learn a technique to break the pattern of these inner monsters. The inner monsters will be a pattern in your past, in this life, possibly even before that, karmic path, but patterns. And those are the patterns we don't want to bring with us any further, right? So we can break the karmic bond, and you can satisfy the requirements that you came here with to fulfill those karmic ends, and then end that pattern. We're on to new material. We're on to a new life, new patterns. The other thing here is, and this is a stronger meme in the Dreambot, is learning and knowing. I think it just makes sense to make this a Mercury going into Gemini sort of a thing. But I'm open to any other suggestions. How about we get into the astrology? Now, so we have a couple more days in April, and we have Pluto is going to end up going retrograde. There's so much going on in this particular week that, as far as astrology goes, I may miss that, but if I do, I have covered it here. Pluto retrograde, things along the lines of power, control, death and rebirth cycles. Maybe this is sort of some of the inner monsters. The subconscious is the domain of Pluto, the deep subconscious, and that's where these monsters live, because we keep on pushing them down and compartmentalizing, put them out of our consciousness so we don't have to see them or deal with them. So those from the past start bubbling up in this time period. And I didn't mention that on the summary slide, and now that I realize that, but that could be part of the gut check, okay? Now, then we've got Mercury going into Gemini, and then well, I'll cover next month here, but Mercury is going to go into retrograde, not necessarily this CIRF week. And then, of course, on April 30th, you've got the partial solar eclipse that we'll talk about more extensively. Going into May, we have a retrograde Pluto, and then trying to find Pluto retrograde is here, and it's well, it doesn't say the date, 7, 8, 9, 10th. Probably about the 10th of April, it's going to go into retrograde and actually go back into Taurus during that period of time before it goes direct again. We have this CIRF week. The CIRF week ends on this vertical black line, by the way. We have, before that, Venus going into Aries. And she's not real big into, she just gets weakened because Aries is more of the warrior and able to handle conflict. Well, peace and beauty and the feminine doesn't work well in that sign. So she's in detriment. So when we had, remember, peace breaking out, sort of have a time limit on that according to Venus. Now she's got this sort of climax this week because she's going to make a conjunction with Jupiter, and that's just exuberant. So she's not only in a state of exaltation, but she's also conjunct with optimistic, higher level, transcendent Jupiter. And so there's like this big, huge spark of real positive hope. Lots of hope in there, and you're going to see that word again too, especially in the I-Ching reading. That's where that hope is coming from. But then right after that, it's like a collapse then of Venus. After that, a conjunction, she goes into Aries, makes a detriment, and then this Jupiter influence starts to wane pretty quickly. And that's probably, that quick changing dynamic would probably really feel like a collapse in and of itself, like despair from hope to despair quickly. So just if you're feeling that towards the end of this CIRF week, that's where that's coming from. Let's see. Then we have a lunar eclipse, and this is going exact. It's a total lunar eclipse. And for central time frame, it's going to be in the evening on a Sunday evening, the 15th, I believe. We're not going to look at this CIRF report, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that. And that's a full moon. All right, so let's nail day by day. Thursday, 28th. This is still in April 28th. And we've got the sun, who's been in Taurus for a few degrees here, has turned steady, determined, can be bullheaded. And remember how this is more like a train. The sun in Taurus is more of like a heavy train. Maybe not fast, depending on how long they've been getting started. These generators tend to take a little bit longer to get started, but once they do, they're hard to stop. Now, the problem is we're entering into a conjunction with Uranus, and Uranus is really fast changing. And so this changes the direction of this heavy, fast running train at this point. Been in Taurus for over 8 degrees. So we've got the engine going, and so determination is up there. We've got the last little bit of Mercury in Taurus. So right now, four Taurus planets, which is an Earth sign, Pluto in Earth, and then we have Moon just left. So we talked about this last time, but it's a real heavy focus on Earth and water right now. There's a lot of chafing on that. It's not it's almost unnoticeable, but there is that sort of earth water pressure and also the synergy between the two. So there's that. I'm going to say that's a very subtle thing going on right now, and you might feel it. If you can see clearly in here, I can't zoom in, but there's these semi-sextiles, which are blue, and these represent growth. And that's what I think of when you have water and earth together, is a lot of new growth, a lot of seeds that are sprouting, that kind of thing. But we also have opportunities. Right now, it's one of the lower amounts of sextiles in the week, 5 sextiles, and they represent opportunities. Now, as I was going to mention a little bit later, particularly on the solar eclipse, is opportunities don't necessarily feel a certain way. I was shocked when I had one of my clients in a projected chart. And by the way, we can do your projected chart if you'd like to see what energies that you're individually facing at this point in time. Just go to interzention.com and fill out the little form there. But one of my clients with a projected chart only has sextiles in it. And there are so many opportunities. We're talking probably like 10 or 11 sextiles, and that's it in her projected chart, which means during this time frame, it's only opportunities. Well, I personally was shocked at how that emotional reaction was from just opportunities. You'd think it'd be just glee and hope and everything's exciting. It's not that way, because remember, you've got this fear of making the wrong decision. Well, if you've got too many opportunities, it creates this fear of making the wrong choice. But you got to remember that when you have all these opportunities, you have to trust that even if you make the wrong decision, which maybe there is no wrong decision, there's still more opportunities. So there's just this constant stream of opportunity. Can't make a wrong decision, but if you happen to feel like you did, just keep looking, because there's an opportunity. And that's exactly what's happening for her. Once we reoriented that perception of opportunity, she's starting to live it, trust it, and experiencing it. And so not being destroyed by it or not being anxious about it. All right, Friday the 29th, not quite yet, but Mercury is in the last few minutes of going into Gemini. And when it does, I'm going to talk about it now, because we're getting into the solar eclipse. And in that day, Mercury will have gone into Gemini. But basically, we're going into home. Mercury is returning home. Now, return is not a really good use of words here, because return is used more in astrology with a birth chart. So Mercury in your at the time of your birth was placed in a certain place. And next year, when Mercury comes back around to that same spot, that's called Mercury return. We do this for the sun. We can do this for all the planets. And it's mainly for the faster planets. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about here. We're just saying that Mercury is going out of Taurus, going back into what he rules. And so everything is back to balance for mind, for thoughts. Logic is good learning, good feeling, good awareness of logic, good practical use of that. And that happens at least in the evening time frame on April 29th. But I doubt that you'll even notice that, because we got that partial solar eclipse that's in its final preparation stage within 12 hours of, 24 hours of that right now at this snapshot here. Then we've got the sun and Uranus conjoining. That's a tough one. That's another pressure point. That could also be a generator for inner monsters, because steady as she goes, sun in Taurus is just steady as she goes, and it's getting shaken up by Uranus. So that's unsteady, and that's in adaptation mode or fighting adaptation mode. Well, if you can master this alignment right here, that will help you to adapt to and see and be aware of and seize the opportunities that are afforded you in these sextiles. Now, the alignment that will help you today, this Friday the 29th, is that as you've been seeing, remember the financial escapism we talked about, where Venus and Jupiter in their sub metaphors represent something financial, economic, and wealth. Well, that was in the middle of, or that was bracketing Neptune, the planet of escapism. So we had postulated financial escapism, which, if you've watched the stock market lately, I mean, even gold is getting hit bad. There's a bloody existence. I didn't get updated on the markets just now. They were fairly even today, but that definitely rang true. Well, now, Friday the 29th, Venus is past Neptune, so the escapism emphasis or energies is getting lighter and lighter. And as Venus and Jupiter get closer and closer, then that becomes more of the emphasis. And the Neptune is still there, but it's just kind of the afterthought. It's much less emphasis, and things are much more positive. So you have a exalted Venus, which represents beauty, harmony, ability to get along and harmonize and even negotiate, is at an extreme here, because you got Jupiter, who is ancient ruler of Pisces, and also represents optimism, hope, positivity, planet of excess, expansiveness, lightness. So everything in terms of Venus is on, steroids is not a really good word, but you get the idea. It's extra excessive. It's extra hopeful. I mean, it's extreme. Exalted Venus conjunct Jupiter. So, and that's going to be take us into the partial solar eclipse, April 30th. And I put this just as a snapshot. I don't have a video here, but you can see this is the southern tip of South America. So it's covering the South Pole, which makes sense because the last one was up on the North Pole. So it's shifted to the other side. And so not many of us are going to be able to see this partial solar eclipse. But here we have it. And I want to start where I left off. Look at this. At the time of the solar eclipse, It's at 3:27 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time, so you can extrapolate where it is in your time zone. April 30th, in the middle afternoon, at least in this time frame, we have Jupiter and Venus within 1 minute. So it is as close as you can get to a perfect conjunction without being perfect. So the hope and the exaltation and the exuberance and expansiveness and wisdom, especially wisdom in how to apply beauty or how to see beauty or how to harmonize or how to mediate, all that stuff is at a super high point, a climax, and it's a very quick climax. And that's at the time of the eclipse. So we get that stamp not just in this plus or minus 24 hours. We get this stamp, this positive, hopeful stamp of patterned energy throughout the next 6 months. Okay. And look at all these sextiles. We're looking at 7 sextiles now. We do have one square, sort of a pressure point. That's Mercury and Saturn. But it is almost deteriorated completely at 6 degrees away and waning. So it's all about opportunity here. And again, we can go back to just because it's only opportunities here does not mean that you're going to express this or feel this and you emotionally respond to this in a positive way. So just be aware there are opportunities there. And there is hope. It's just a matter of you finding it, because a lot of us will be in adaptation mode. That's where we have the sun and the moon together in Earth, in Taurus, conjunct Uranus. Now we're only looking at 4 degrees away and closing in quickly. So, but the stamp is a pretty decent influence of Uranus, who's not all that strong in Taurus, but nonetheless, there's this need to be free, to be, let me be myself, as eccentric as that might be, to let me be the mad scientist, but throwing you unexpected change. Uranus is something that you yearn to be able to plan for, but once you've planned out all the different options, Uranus will throw you the one option that you didn't think of. It's almost like by design. Oh, you have option A, B, and C there. I see that. Good job thinking of that. Well, we're going to throw you option Z. And that's just the nature of Uranus. And is the ego knows this, and your emotions know this together in the eclipse. There's this inkling that you can't trust stability. Just that unsettling feeling. Is that the gut check? I think it is. I think that's the major part of this gut check. It's also the lack of faith that you have in your own opportunity finding. And I've seen this a lot in the clients is opportunity does not just feel positive. It's a green line, so it must be positive. Well, not necessarily. It can feel like anxiety. It can feel like very unsettling. Like you're going to, there's an imposter syndrome in here for a lot of people. Like, I'm not qualified to make this choice if I want to take this opportunity. Divination is a big thing in this one. If you're finding that you've got multiple opportunities, which I would think you should be able to find those, you got to get out of your fear mind and into awareness, creativity, divergent thinking mind to be able to see that there are a lot of opportunities for you. When things change fast, which is what's happening in today's world, it can be scary, but it always generates opportunities. So be on the lookout for them. We have a triple opportunity with being able to do or carry out, spiritually adapt to things, just because you've got Mars and Pisces and there's a triple sextile into this eclipse arrangement, right? So this big stamp, this is the biggest opportunity of them all, is to be able to spiritually adapt to something that's very earth-based. This is a Taurus new moon, basically, and the new moon represents this is the next cycle, and because of the eclipse, it's a much longer cycle of the Taurus energy, the being determined, not quitting, wanting to experience. It's this very sensory sign. So all your five senses into reality. That's why we talk about Uranus in Taurus is changing your reality. Amidst all these sextiles, and the biggest one is the triple one down to Mars in Pisces. So it's the ability to run in water really well. Mars is the doer. Mars is the carrying out activities, getting your task list done, but it's in a much more spiritually connected way. It's a Pisces way. So consider that. It's a beautiful mix. It's an opportunity to mix earth and water. One thing I wanted to show you, I found this curious. It's not a huge deal, but we notice we do keep an eye here in these astrology readings. We keep an eye on the parallel and contraparallel readings. In other words, the elevations of these planets. Well, an eclipse normally is either parallel, meaning that they're on the same exact path elevation-wise, or they're on the opposite end of the equatorial plane. And in the full moon, you're going to be looking for contraparallel, but on the new moon, you're looking for perfectly parallel. Well, it's partial, which means that there's going to be a little bit of overlap with the moon and the sun. But in determining these parallels, we use 17 minutes. So even though I'm finding it hard to believe that just this part here is more than 17 minutes, because it's not, the sun and the moon are not located here in our parallel indicator. Now I wanted to show you, remember this one from December was a partial, but it was parallel. You've got the sun and moon that are considered parallel. So it was partial, but it was close enough to where it was considered parallel. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Sunday, the 1st now, it's the day after. This is eclipse hangover day, having all that energy all at once. And we have the sun closer to Uranus. We have Mercury again in Gemini. We have a couple of squares here. Nothing even worth talking about, in my opinion, because of this. You've got Venus has gone past Jupiter now. They're at 28 degrees of Pisces. It's still at that climax that we talked about, climax of, I don't know, everything Venus and Pisces, exaggerated, expansive, even wiser, all that stuff. Sunday, then Monday, the 2nd, now Venus, fast-moving Venus is going into Aries, down decrement. This is the backside of our climax, as the power that Venus has is wilting and fading fast. Right now at 12, it's basically noon Central Time on Monday. Venus is just entered into Aries. And then we have 2 degrees between Sun and Uranus. So this thing that we've been keep on talking about is including the sextile is just getting stronger and stronger. You can see Mars at 13 degrees of Pisces, sextile, Uranus at 14, Sun at 12. So bracketing that's a very strong sextile. All right. Now we've lost the moon, so Got that too. Then we go into Tuesday the 3rd, 1 degree away from the Sun and Uranus. We have 3, 4, 5, 6 sextiles, so still a lot of opportunities. It's a really fast square here emotionally. Now, Moon is in Gemini, so things are much more rational, or at least you're aware of what's rational. For some of you, able to really capitalize in on that and be a lot more aware of the rational life, the rational application of life. On Wednesday, the final day of our CIRF report, is the Sun and Uranus. Perhaps going exact maybe in the evening on Wednesday, and that's going to be the climax of our, like, which one's more powerful? It's one energy. By the way, Sun and Uranus are parallel. I mean, they're in the same elevation. And get this, so a partial solar eclipse that we had, this was not even considered parallel. So that means Uranus and Sun are directly over each other, within 17 minutes of each other. And so that really maximizes this. And so if we use that same concept of Cazimi, which is here, we are pretty close to that even at noon. And the Sun going past Uranus will create this supercharged, eccentric, freedom-oriented, just shining pure Uranus onto the life, onto Earth, onto humans. So it's this DNA making supercharged Uranus archetype onto everybody for those few hours. It's going to be strong. So if you got this kind of concept, I know these are oxymorons, but you have like a steadfast, bullheaded, freedom-loving archetype that gets thrown at you. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be great. And I'll give you the edge that you need to adapt to these opportunities, hopefully. All right, that's it for the astrology. Let's get into the influence of I-Ching, or how the I-Ching reads the biggest energy is excessive pressure. It's like a dam that's about ready to burst. It says something is about to collapse. Well, you don't say. It might be a collapse of thought. It might be a collapse of ideals, but it also might be a collapse of a reality. That's what Uranus has been wearing down our reality in Taurus for a long time now. A great pressure is causing an imbalance that needs correction. If the dam is about to burst, basically is what I said before. Extraordinary times bring out the best and worst in people. So you're going to see fence riders no longer on the fence. It's either one direction or the other. People are going to be supercharged into benevolent action, and other people are going to get into selfish action. It's the best and worst. Sextiles. This may be the moment you've been waiting for. Yeah. And then line 3 says, plunging willfully ahead during risky times against the advice of your friends and intimates invites trouble and is likely to make things far worse. Nothing in here said that we are into quick action. We don't have any fire signs, any fire energy in the astrology. We have the Earth, which is tends to be slower to get started, so we're not fast responders. But you also have Mars in Pisces, running in water, which is not fast. None of this is fast. Watch out for impulsive action. It's probably incorrect this week. So we put our one change line in, and we get oppression. So this is the behavior component for this week. Tap the deepest stratum of your identity, which is stronger than fate and incorruptible, even the harshest realities. During hard times, it is especially essential to tap that wellspring of human endurance, which is hope. And I've identified that as the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, Venus exalted in Pisces, Jupiter ruling Pisces is together, extreme hope. And that's mainly the middle portion, and will drop off quickly towards the end of our week. So don't lose that hope, but notice how it wanes towards the end. It is important to be strong on the inside while remaining quietly cheerful on the outside. Avoid too much talking, except to your closest friends. A big foot stomper here. If you haven't been listening, pay attention to this. Your influence will be at a low ebb. Recall how many planets we have in fire signs. It's not good. We don't have a big influence this week. So remember, the other archetype of Uranus, which is a strong feature this week, is the eccentric one, but has no problem being alone, the isolationist. So the influence is at a low. Aimlessly talking costs you vital energy. Don't waste your energy this week. A strong silence is the most skillful posture when facing public during adversity. You're basically a surfer trying to stop a huge ocean wave. Ain't gonna do it. So just ride the wave and shut up. To never fail is to fail in the biggest way. There's going to be failure this week, and you're going to be watching other people fail. But that's how opportunities are created, right? All right, so we put our chart into, or put our partial solar eclipse into the conversion chart. And we get hexagram 24 in the rave, and we get Aries. Sidereal Aries. This is called hexagram 24 is returning. The natural and spontaneous process of transformation and renewal. Get this. Remember the I-Ching about just shut up and don't try to change anybody or don't try to influence anything. The Hermit. This is where the eclipse is. The Hermit. Transformation can only take place in isolation. Wow. And, Uranus has a part in this transformation because it's the planet of insight, of the mad scientist, of the genius, and it's the isolationist. So this is a very Uranus sort of congruency, is the Hermit. And it says the discipline and focus that assures renewal. Aloneness enriches the potential for rational thought. And we have a synergy there with Mercury going into Gemini. So your potential for rational thought increases there as well. Not just in the rave, but also in other alignments. Now, pay attention though, because aloneness can encourage on the downside risk with Neptune. Aloneness encourages the potential of illusion or delusion. So you have to realize that this is not a one-way door, that you have both opportunity and risk when you go be alone this week. All right. Now, let's get into the solution chart. All right. So this is the Taurus sun. Taurus eclipse is gut check. How determined are you? And when this rock starts to spin sideways, are you able to adapt because of Uranus? So the overview of the influence is the solar eclipse in Taurus is conjunct Uranus, making one thing very reliable and Taurus-y over the next 6 months. Our reality, that's Taurus, is changing, and that's Uranus. This is supported directly by the I-Ching, indicating something is about to collapse, i.e. excessive pressure. All right, now, what do we do with that energy? Remember the I-Ching said your influence is very low. Avoid talking too much. You can talk to your closest relationships, but I wouldn't waste much energy on it. Remember all that? And the rave said it's the Hermit, and that aloneness is going to enrich your potential for rational thought, but at the risk It encourages illusion, but it supports this being alone thing. And then we have interesting Sidereal Aries, which gives us the ability to be direct, transparent, finding ourselves, be intense and passionate, out of nowhere, out of the tropical astrology, which really only has water and earth, is now we have the sidereal ability to carry out what was missing, which is the fire. And I think that's what we need for these times. We need a little bit of Aries. We need a lot of Aries. So let's go through the triangulation. Let's give you some support this week. The Taurus new moon eclipse energy might have a sort of full moon unexpectancy feel due to the Uranus conjunct. I'm only talking about the emotional response to that. I'm not talking about how, the full moon, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks, which is another eclipse, is discombobulating. It's not that kind, but at the same time, it's not that regular old new moon feel. It's not new moon, I'm ready for a new phase. This is, oh crap, something's about to change things. So it's got that kind of full moon vibe to it. We are in adaptation mode for the next few months. The solution triangulation takes an obvious bid towards the introvert. It's time to go within, as evidenced by both the I-Ching and the Rave. And the Dreambot talked about the inner monsters. I think that's where we correlate all this stuff together. Despite having the Aries vigor, passion, and ability to confront things, remember that your influence level is probably lower than normal. That's a big foot stomper. I'm stomping my foot a couple times. Don't expect your influence to be high this week. The Aries solution allows you to be strong in the face of outside drama. Remain strong as an ox inside. Okay? Reassure yourself, dig deep, foster self-confidence and self-esteem. Now is not the time to prove your vulnerability. Keep quiet. Be the hermit. Talk yourself up to yourself. Talk yourself up. In other words, don't be your inner critic. That's going to be one of your inner monsters for some of you. Try to be more aware of the inner critic and be there with yourself. Now, this is self-acceptance. Self-acceptance, in my opinion, psychologically is better than trying to outdo the inner critic with positivity. But whatever helps you to get out of the inner critic would be best. Now, there's another risk of talking yourself up, which is to end up being on the other side, which is the grandiose side, which is the unreasonably high opinion of self, which doesn't really serve you anything other than get you into vulnerability, get you some blind spots. So self-acceptance, there's nothing higher than that, in my opinion, in terms of what we're talking about. The Rave confirms that maximum transformation takes place in isolation. However, realize aloneness enriches both potential and risks. The potential to transform rationally, but the risk of self-delusion, grandiosity, etc. The struggle for self-worth should have less thoughts, not more. The struggle for self-worth, and that applies to both the Aries strength or solution, but also the worth part is the Taurus struggle, new moon, partial eclipse. I didn't even mention that, but it's this big determined to be self-worth, to see self-worth. That is part of that Taurus cycle. Don't be surprised if you get this patterned approach over the next 6 months or so of trying to get more self-worth. That's the partial solar eclipse happening this week. But the struggle for self-worth should have less thoughts, not more. And what I mean by that is one thing to try this week. This is the mantra advice that I normally give out on these solution slides. It's the I am. And what I mean by that is the I am is a mental space. It's a very spiritual space too, but it drops all these labels so much. We describe, well, who are you? And then you have to add labels to yourself. Well, I'm a psychologist. Well, I'm a PhD. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I have some clients saying I'm a felon. They're labels. But if you notice, that's not really who they are. Maybe they've written a book. That's not who they are. That's something that they've done. So the I am, and being able to sit in that mentally and emotionally, quietly, without any other words of just I am, and tapping into that core inner who-ness of who you are without words. And the way that to check this is that notice how you naturally, your mind spins more words than what is actually here. I am. You say that to yourself quietly in a meditative state, and notice how your mind just wants to go grab at labels and find them and attach them to you. Those aren't who you are. I am sits there without any other words. And so to check that, some of you might be able to access a quietness of your mind, but the subconscious is bubbling up. And you don't really know what the subconscious is saying because that wouldn't be the subconscious. But as it bubbles up, there's feelings there. And so if you see tensions or pains or something other than just sort of a zen or an emptiness, a comfortable emptiness, not just a scary existential void, but a comfortableness without any other words. Now, to check this every once in a while, to check in with yourself, you can ask yourself, am I? And it's the ability to question self. This will give you the ability to not fall into illusion. Because if you go, I am, unchecked, and your mind starts wandering off, you can go into self-delusion. I am. Oh, I'm so, because you feel these good vibes or good neurotransmitters. You start to, oh my God, I'm really good at this. I'm awesome. And you don't even know you're saying that. So you end up in grandiosity, which is not wrong. It's not evil. It's just not I am. Okay. And so with Aries, I like Aries here. We have an internal focus this week. And so you can check yourself. Am I? This is not a question to demean yourself, to be the devil's advocate with yourself. It's not that. It's not talking down to yourself. Am I? No, it's curious. It's purely curious. It's, am I? And the test here is to see what mind does with that. Am I? Do I need to solve something? And how's your stomach feel? Is it starting to feel sick? Am I? Well, we've got some inner monsters there, don't we? If you can check, am I, without any other thoughts, it rolls back into, I am. But not a mental I am. It's a soul I am. It's a heart I am. There's a knowing. There's a difference between a rational, I know this to be true, and a intuitive heart level solar plexus, I know. And this I am mentality needs to be more of the unspoken experiential knowing, a Gnostic knowing that all is well. There's nothing else. It's just I am. So hopefully this is going to be some help for you. Let me know if I've misspoken or missed some things, missed some important advice. But I think this would be a really good week to press the occupied or busy or do not disturb sign, and go into this I am state as much as you can. It's a very conscious and aware state. It's the perfect mix between our water, Pisces, all our Pisces planets, and our Earth, because it's a very spiritual thing. But ironically, you're completely out here in your five senses and you're experiencing reality. Very mindfulness space without any judgment, without any additional thinking. And it's a very relaxing space. So enjoy it. And then don't be surprised if anxiety shows up with all these opportunities. So watch out for lack of trust. You go back to the Aries, which is strong, determined, but direct, passionate, intense. So watch out for impulsiveness, though. That's your biggest indicator across all the influence triangulation and the solution triangulation. Impulsiveness is wrong action this week. All right. Let's do it. Happy partial eclipse. Happy Taurus new moon eclipse. Enjoy it, everybody. We'll see you next week for another edition of the CIRF Report. Take care.